Arman Khalid, the CEO of one of the country's largest grocery chains, walked through the automatic doors of his own store. He wore simple clothes, a plain blue shirt, faded jeans, and old sneakers. No gold watch, no expensive suit, nothing to signal that he was the man in charge of the company. Most people passed by without a second glance. To them, he was just another customer. Arman had grown tired of sitting in his office, staring at spreadsheets and sales reports. His managers often boasted about how smoothly everything ran, but he knew reports never showed the full story. He wanted to see the real work, the effort, the struggles, the tiny moments that no one noticed. Today, he decided, he would go undercover. Inside the store, the fluorescent lights buzzed softly. The scent of fresh bread and fruits filled the air. Arman slowly walked down the aisles, pretending to check prices. But his eyes were drawn to the cash registers, where the real action happened. At one counter, a young woman with dark hair tied in a neat bun moved quickly, scanning items with practiced ease. Her name tag read Sana. She smiled at each customer, her tone polite and cheerful, but something in her movements caught Arman's attention. She kept glancing toward the break room, her eyes tired, her hands sometimes trembling slightly. Arman watched silently as she handed change to a little boy who had come with his mother. He noticed she didn't pause to take a sip of water or even breathe deeply. Every few minutes, she would glance at a small bag under the counter, as if checking something hidden inside. Curiosity gnawed at him. He decided to stay nearby, pretending to inspect the products on the shelves, but his eyes never left her. Customers came and went, but Sana's focus never wavered. She smiled, nodded, and joked gently, even though her body seemed exhausted. Finally, when the line slowed, she slipped quietly to the back storage room. Arman's heart beat faster. He followed discreetly, making sure not to draw attention. Inside the small room, he saw something that made him stop in his tracks. Sana was kneeling on the floor, holding a tiny baby in her arms. She fed him from a small bottle, humming softly. The baby's eyes were bright and alert, and he sucked eagerly. Arman felt a sudden pang in his chest. He had seen many things in his life, but this quiet sacrifice was something else entirely. He realized that this young cashier was not just working to support herself, she was working to give her child a better life. She skipped lunch, skipped breaks, and pushed herself to exhaustion, all so her baby could be fed and cared for. Sana looked up suddenly, glancing toward the storage door. Arman froze, pretending to adjust a box on the shelf. She relaxed again, not noticing him. Her focus returned to the baby, her hands gentle, her touch tender. For a moment, Arman just watched. He felt admiration, but also a strange sense of guilt. How many times had he complained about his long hours, about the stress of managing the company, while this young mother worked tirelessly just to keep her baby safe and fed. The baby finished the bottle, and Sana carefully burped him, patting his back with love and patience. She whispered soft words, encouraging him, comforting him. Arman's eyes misted without him realizing. There was something in her determination, in her selfless love, that reminded him why people work so hard every day. After a few minutes, Sana carefully placed the baby in a small basket lined with blankets. She looked at him, smiled softly, and whispered, "I'll be back soon, little one. Stay strong." Then, she washed her hands, took a deep breath, and returned to her register as if nothing had happened. Arman followed her with his gaze as she scanned items and handed out change. He noticed how she kept a small smile for everyone, even when exhaustion weighed her down. She greeted every customer with warmth, even those who were rude or impatient. A man in a suit complained loudly about a price. Sana didn't raise her voice. She explained politely, apologized, and even offered a small discount when she could. Arman could see the strength in her, the patience, and the love she carried for her baby reflected in every action. He began to think about the thousands of employees in his company, wondering how many others went unnoticed like Sana. How many worked long hours without recognition, making personal sacrifices to keep their families safe. For the first time, Armin realized that his empire wasn't built only on profits or sales reports. It was built on people like Sana, people whose dedication and love went beyond what anyone could see. He felt a quiet promise form in his mind. He would help her, somehow. He didn't know how yet, but he would. The day went on, and Armin continued observing. Every interaction, every smile, every small act of care became more significant. Sana's exhaustion didn't make her bitter, it made her human. It made her strong. And the CEO, hidden among the customers, felt the first stirrings of a change not just for his company, but for himself as well. By the time the store closed, Armin had made a decision. Tomorrow, he would return. He would watch more, learn more, and understand more. There was a story here, a story of sacrifice, love, and strength. And he knew, somehow, that this story would change both of their lives. The next morning, Armin returned to the same store. He kept a low profile, blending in as just another customer. His eyes immediately found Sana at her register. She looked the same, alert, polite, and tirelessly working, but there was a subtle weariness in her movements. She carried the weight of sleepless nights and long hours, but she never complained. Armin noticed her small bag again, tucked carefully under the counter. Her glances toward it were more frequent today, and his curiosity grew. He decided to follow her after she took a short break from the register. This time, he stayed even more careful, making sure no one noticed him. Sana walked quickly toward the back storage room, her hands clutching the bag tightly. Armin slowed, waiting for the right moment. Inside, he discovered a scene that pulled at his heart even more than yesterday. Sana gently placed a small, swaddled baby on a soft blanket in a corner of the room. The baby was tiny, with dark, shining eyes that seemed to notice everything. Sana reached into her bag and carefully pulled out a small bottle she had prepared earlier. She warmed it over a small hot plate and checked the temperature with her hand before feeding the baby. Armin stood quietly in the doorway, unseen. He watched as she whispered to her child, her voice soft and soothing. "Eat slowly, my love. Mama's right here." She adjusted the blanket, keeping the baby snug and safe. Every movement was gentle, every touch filled with care. It was clear now why Sana skipped lunch and breaks. Her focus was entirely on her baby. She worked long hours at the store, but her heart and energy belonged to her child. She had no family nearby to help, no one to share the burden. Every day was a challenge, yet she faced it with courage and determination. Armin's chest tightened as he realized the depth of her struggle. This young mother, who appeared so calm and composed at the register, had a life full of unseen battles. She worked tirelessly, not for luxury or comfort, but for the simple survival and happiness of her baby. Suddenly, Sana looked around, as if sensing someone nearby. Armin froze, pretending to adjust some boxes stacked against the wall. Her eyes scanned the room, then softened when she returned her attention to the baby. She gently burped him, humming a quiet lullaby. The baby's tiny fingers curled around her thumb, and Armin felt a lump in his throat. He realized how brave she was. Every morning, she left her own sleep and comfort to go to work, carrying the responsibility of feeding and caring for a newborn. She managed her exhaustion silently, with no complaints, no announcements, no requests for help. The baby finished the bottle, and Sana carefully cleaned the little mouth and wiped the hands. Then she spoke softly, "I promise, we'll be okay, my love. I'll make sure of it." Her voice was full of determination, a mixture of exhaustion and hope. Armin's admiration grew with every word. When Sana finally returned to the register, Armin stayed behind the shelves, watching as she greeted each customer with a bright smile. Despite the sleepless nights and endless work, she still managed to be kind and patient. One elderly woman dropped a coin, and Sana bent down to pick it up, smiling warmly as she handed it back. Another customer asked a question impatiently, but Sana answered calmly, without frustration. Armin began to notice something else: the small ways Sana tried to make her work environment easier. She organized products efficiently, cleaned up quickly, and even helped her colleagues when they were busy. She carried a burden no one else could see, yet she gave her best in every action. As the day passed, Armin followed her discreetly. He saw her sneak into the storage room a few more times, always checking on her baby. Each time, she prepared a small snack, fed him, and returned with a soft sigh of relief. The love she poured into these moments was visible, even through the simple gestures: a gentle touch, a quiet hum, a reassuring smile. Armin began to understand that this was not just a story of hard work, it was a story of love, courage, and sacrifice. Sana's life was full of struggles that the world would never notice, but she faced them anyway. She did not complain, she did not ask for help, and yet she gave everything she had to her child. By the time the store closed, Armin felt a deep sense of respect and admiration. He knew that no amount of money or status could match the kind of strength Sana displayed every single day. She was quietly heroic, battling exhaustion and responsibility without anyone knowing. As he left the store, Armin's mind was filled with thoughts of how he could help her, not in a way that humiliated her or made her feel indebted, but in a way that truly supported her life and honored her courage. He felt a growing determination to find a way to make a difference, not just for Sana, but for others like her, whose stories went unnoticed in the daily grind. Walking to his car, he glanced back at the store. Inside, Sana was finishing her shift, smiling at the customers, caring for her co-workers, and hiding the exhaustion that weighed her down. Armin realized that sometimes, the real heroes were not the ones in boardrooms or on stages, they were people like Sana, quietly giving everything for those they loved. And in that moment, he knew that this encounter would change something in him forever. The next day, Armin returned to the store. By now, he was beginning to understand the rhythm of Sana's life. Every movement, every gesture, told a story of tireless dedication and quiet love. He still wore his plain clothes and carried himself as a simple customer, but inside, his mind was busy observing every detail. Sana was at her register, as usual, smiling politely at the customers. She greeted each one warmly, even the ones who were impatient or rude. Armin noticed how she bent down to help a child pick up a dropped item, how she guided an elderly man patiently through the checkout, and how she kept glancing toward the small storage room to make sure everything was ready for her baby. Armin couldn't help but admire her. There was something remarkable in the way she managed her work with care and her baby with love. Every day, she balanced both worlds flawlessly, hiding her struggles behind a cheerful face. During a quiet moment, Armin saw Sana glance at her small wristwatch and sigh softly. She quickly packed some snacks from her bag and walked toward the storage room. Armin followed discreetly, careful not to disturb her. Inside the storage room, he saw her feed her baby once again. The baby cooed and smiled, reaching out to grab her fingers. Sana laughed softly, a warm and genuine sound, and the baby gurgled in response. Armin watched, silently amazed at the bond between mother and child. It was not just the act of feeding, it was the care, the attention, the love that she poured into every small gesture. Armin realized that he had never seen anything so pure in his life. There were no cameras, no advertisements, no applause, just a mother doing everything she could to give her child the best life possible. For the first time, Armin felt a connection not with his company, not with profits or reports, but with the human side of life. He began to think about all the employees in his stores, all the stories he would never know if he stayed hidden in his office. Sana's courage and patience inspired him in a way he had never expected. As he watched, Sana's eyes softened. She whispered gently to the baby, "I know it's hard, little one. But we will make it through, I promise. Mama will always take care of you." Her voice carried a mix of exhaustion, determination, and love. Armin felt a lump in his throat. He had seen many leaders in business, but few people had hearts like hers. After feeding the baby, Sana carefully cleaned up the small bottles and blankets. She checked the baby's clothes, adjusted the blanket, and then prepared him for a short nap. Every movement was precise, filled with care, yet done quietly so she wouldn't waste time. Armin noticed that she never complained, never asked for help, and never showed frustration. Instead, she moved through her day with a quiet dignity, managing her work and her child with remarkable strength. Back at the register, Sana greeted the next customers with the same warmth and patience. Armin followed her eyes and noticed how she subtly encouraged her co-workers, offered small tips to make tasks easier, and even shared a kind word with the janitor who cleaned the floor. Her kindness was not limited to her baby, it extended to everyone around her. Armin realized that he had been living in a bubble, thinking of success as numbers, profits, and achievements. But here, in this small store, he was witnessing something far more important: humanity. Sana was teaching him, without words, the meaning of sacrifice, love, and perseverance. During a quiet moment in the afternoon, a customer's child dropped a toy on the floor. Sana immediately picked it up, handed it back, and smiled. Armin watched her for a long moment. She didn't need recognition, she didn't need applause. She simply wanted to make life better, not just for her baby, but for everyone around her. Armin found himself thinking about how he could make a difference. Not just as a CEO, but as a human being. He wondered how many other Sanas worked in his stores, unnoticed, overlooked, and struggling silently. He realized that helping people like her was more important than any quarterly report or profit margin. By the end of the day, Armin was quiet and thoughtful. He left the store slowly, taking one last glance at Sana, who was finishing her shift, tired but still smiling. He felt a connection he could not explain, a silent understanding that her life, her struggles, and her love were worth more than anything he had chased in his corporate world. That night, he sat in his office, thinking about Sana. He thought about how he could help without embarrassing her or making her feel dependent. He thought about ways to honor her strength and provide support that she truly needed. And for the first time in a long while, he felt that business and humanity could meet, that compassion and leadership could work together. Armin knew that tomorrow, he would return. He wanted to see more, learn more, and understand more. He didn't know yet how he would help Sana, but he was certain of one thing: her story mattered, and he would not let it go unnoticed. It was another busy afternoon at the store. Sana moved swiftly between the registers, her eyes alert and her hands steady, scanning items and bagging groceries with practiced efficiency. She greeted each customer with a polite smile, hiding the exhaustion she felt deep inside. Her small bag, tucked under the counter, remained close at all times, a reminder of her baby waiting at home or perhaps just around the corner, like always. Armin Khalid, still disguised in plain clothes, watched silently from a distance. Over the past few days, he had grown more aware of the quiet strength and dedication that Sana carried in every gesture. He admired her patience, her energy, and the warmth she shared with everyone despite the long hours and heavy burdens she carried. Suddenly, a loud crash interrupted the rhythm of the store. Armin's eyes immediately focused on Sana. A small bottle had slipped from her bag and tumbled to the floor, spilling its contents across the tiles. Milk spread quickly, forming a slippery puddle. Sana froze, her eyes wide with panic. "Oh no," she whispered under her breath. She crouched down, frantically grabbing napkins from the counter to soak up the mess. Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to clean the spill while still keeping an eye on the long line of customers waiting to check out. Armin stepped forward discreetly. "Here, "Let me help," he said softly, bending down beside her. Sana glanced up, startled, but saw only a calm, reassuring stranger. Together, they wiped the floor, working quickly to prevent any accidents. Sana's face flushed, a mix of embarrassment and worry crossing her features. I'm so sorry," she murmured. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Armin shook his head. "It's okay. Accidents happen. Are you all right?" he asked kindly. He could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the strain in her movements. There was more to this than a spilled bottle. Sana nodded, taking a deep breath. Yes, I'm fine. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but still carrying the edge of fatigue. She returned to the register, moving with slightly less energy than before, her mind clearly still racing from the mishap. Armin followed discreetly, watching as she continued her work. Customers came and went, some oblivious to the small crisis that had just occurred. Sana smiled at each one, answered questions patiently, and kept her composure even as her hands occasionally brushed her bag, checking on what she held inside. Later, during a brief lull in the customer flow, Sana slipped away to the storage room. Armin's curiosity and concern drew him to follow. Inside, he saw her kneeling on the floor, gently feeding her baby. The baby's tiny hands reached out, grabbing at her fingers as he drank from the bottle she held. Sana hummed softly, a lullaby that sounded like love itself, soothing both the child and herself. Armin felt his heart tighten. The sight of her devotion, the tenderness in her voice, and the way she moved so carefully despite her exhaustion made him realize the enormity of her daily struggle. She was managing two lives at once, her baby's and her own, without complaint, without hesitation. As Sana burped the baby and gently laid him in a small basket lined with blankets, she whispered, "It's okay, my love. Mama's here. Everything will be fine." Her voice was a mix of hope, fatigue, and love. Armin felt a lump in his throat. He had never witnessed anything so quietly heroic in his life. Returning to the register, Sana quickly cleaned her area, organized her items, and greeted the next customer with her usual warmth. Her exhaustion was still visible in the subtle lines on her face, but she refused to let it show. Every smile, every polite word, every gesture of patience reflected her inner strength. Armin realized that the spilled bottle had revealed much more than just a small accident. It had revealed her vulnerability, her humanity, and the quiet heroism that she carried every single day. People like Sana were the real foundation of his company, the unseen hands that kept everything moving with care and dedication. By the end of her shift, Sana carefully counted her cash, tidied her station, and gave her co-workers a tired but warm smile. Armin, watching from the background, felt a mixture of admiration, concern, and determination. He knew he wanted to help, but he also knew it had to be done in a way that respected her pride and dignity. Walking toward his car, Armin thought about the spilled bottle, the frantic moments, and the soft lullabies in the storage room. That small mishap had revealed a story of sacrifice and love that no amount of money could measure. He understood that her life was not just about work or survival, it was about the love she gave, silently and without recognition, to someone who depended on her entirely. As he drove away, he made a silent promise to himself. He would return. He would learn more. And when the time was right, he would find a way to support her, to honor her strength, and to make a difference not just for Sana, but for everyone like her, quietly holding the world together with love, patience, and sacrifice. Armin knew that he could no longer remain a distant observer. The spilled bottle, the frantic cleaning, the soft lullabies, they had shown him the truth. Sometimes, the greatest courage was not in the boardroom, not in the big decisions, but in the small, unnoticed acts of love and responsibility. And Sana had more courage in her little finger than many people had in their entire lives. The next morning, Armin returned to the store, but this time he carried a different purpose in his heart. He had watched Sana for several days now and had seen her strength, patience, and love for her baby. Every small action, every smile, every act of quiet courage had left a deep mark on him. Today, he knew it was time to take a step forward, not as a hidden observer, but as someone who could truly help. Sana was at her register when he arrived. She greeted each customer with her usual warmth, her tired eyes shining with dedication. Armin stood in line, pretending to browse items, but his heart raced with anticipation. How would she react if she knew who he really was? Would she trust him? When the line finally cleared, Armin stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said gently. Sana looked up, smiling politely. "Yes? How can I help you?" she asked. Armin took a deep breath. "My name is Armin Khalid," he said calmly. "I'm the CEO of this company." Sana blinked, confused. I'm sorry." Her voice trembled slightly. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. "I know this may be a surprise," Armin continued. "I've been visiting your store undercover because I wanted to understand what life is really like here. And over the past few days, I've seen something remarkable." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I've seen your dedication, your patience, and your love not just for your work, but for your baby." Sana's eyes widened. She stared at him, unsure if she should laugh, cry, or step back. You've been watching me," she whispered, a mix of disbelief and caution in her voice. "I've seen enough to know how hard you work, how much you sacrifice, and how much love you give," Armin said softly. "I want to help, if you'll let me." Sana's mind raced. She had always been proud, independent, and careful not to ask for help. She had managed everything alone: her baby, her work, her life, without relying on anyone. Now, standing before the CEO of the company, she felt a mix of shock, embarrassment, and a strange hope she had not felt in years. Why would you care?" she asked quietly. I'm just a cashier. There are many people here, and I don't deserve special attention." Armin smiled gently. "It's not about deserving. It's about noticing. People like you, who work tirelessly, who care deeply, who sacrifice for others, they deserve to be seen. And I want to do more than just see you. I want to support you, in ways that truly make a difference for you and your baby." Sana's eyes filled with tears. She blinked rapidly, trying to hold back the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. I don't know what to say," she whispered. She felt a strange combination of relief, disbelief, and gratitude. Armin nodded. "You don't have to say anything right now. I just want you to know that I understand. And I want to help you without taking away your independence. I know how hard you work, and I don't want to change that. I just want to make it a little easier for you." Sana's heart swelled. For the first time in months, maybe even years, she felt that someone truly saw her. Not the tired cashier, not the young single mother struggling alone, but the whole person: her strength, her courage, her love. Armin continued, "I've arranged some support for you. Flexible hours, childcare assistance, and even opportunities to learn new skills that can help you advance in your career. You won't have to choose between work and caring for your baby anymore." Sana's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her apron, clutching it as if to steady herself. I don't know what to say," she repeated, her voice thick with emotion. I've never had anyone care like this before." "That's because most people don't notice," Armin said softly. "But I do. And I want to make sure that your dedication and love don't go unrecognized." For a long moment, they stood in silence, surrounded by the hum of the store. Sana looked down at her hands, then back at Armin, trying to process everything. She had been living in constant struggle, hiding her exhaustion and her worries behind a brave smile. Now, Someone had finally acknowledged her life, her efforts, and her love. Finally, she whispered, "Thank you. I I don't know how to thank you enough." Armin smiled. "You don't need to. Just keep being the amazing person you are. The world and I will take care of the rest." As he left the store that day, Armin felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He had met someone extraordinary, someone who reminded him of the true value of life, of love, and of care. And Sana, standing behind her register, felt a glimmer of hope, a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time, she realized that she didn't have to face the world alone. A few days after revealing his identity, Armin returned to the store once more. This time, Sana noticed him, but she wasn't afraid or suspicious. She had had time to process what had happened, the unexpected revelation that the stranger who had been quietly observing her was the CEO of the company. Her emotions were still raw, but she had slowly begun to feel hope, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself in months. Armin walked up to her register with a warm smile. "Good morning, Sana," he said simply. His voice carried kindness, respect, and reassurance. Sana returned the greeting, slightly nervous but calm. "Good morning, sir," she said softly, though she didn't call him CEO. He had made her feel at ease, as though he were just another human being, not a figure of power. "I wanted to check in," Armin said. "How are you and your baby doing?" Sana's cheeks flushed slightly. "We're okay," she said. She realized she was smiling, even with the exhaustion lingering in her eyes. "It's been a little easier these past few days." "Thank you." Armin nodded. "I'm glad. But I want it to be easier for you every day, not just a few. I've arranged for some support flexible hours so you can spend time with your baby, childcare assistance to make life smoother, and opportunities to learn new skills if you want to grow in your career. I want to help in ways that matter, not just with words." Sana blinked, unable to hide her emotion. She had always been proud, always relied on herself, and now she felt a weight lifted, not by chance, but by someone who truly saw her struggles. I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You don't need to thank me," Armin said kindly. "Just keep being yourself. The world needs people like you." Over the next few weeks, Sana noticed small changes in her life. She no longer had to rush home from work just to feed her baby. The company arranged a safe, nearby child care facility where she could leave him for a few hours, knowing he was cared for. Her shifts were adjusted to fit better with her child's schedule, giving her rest and peace of mind. Sana felt a freedom she had never experienced before. No longer did she have to choose between work and her child. No longer did she have to skip meals or hide her exhaustion. And yet, she never lost her warmth, her patience, or her kindness. Armin occasionally visited the store, but now he wasn't hidden. He greeted Sana warmly and checked in on her progress, but he never imposed or judged. He simply encouraged her, respected her dignity, and allowed her to continue being strong and independent. One afternoon, as Sana prepared to feed her baby in the small staff room, Armin walked in quietly. "Mind if I join you for a moment?" he asked softly. Sana shook her head, smiling. "Of course not," she said. She felt a strange comfort around him now, a mixture of respect and trust. Armin watched as Sana fed her baby, gently humming and smiling. "He's growing fast," Armin observed, his voice soft. "You're doing an amazing job." Sana looked up, surprised at his words. "Thank you," she said quietly. "It's not always easy, but I try." "That's exactly why you're remarkable," Armin said. "You care so much, you give so much, and you never complain. That kind of courage deserves recognition and support." Sana's heart warmed. She realized that someone had finally acknowledged the effort and love she poured into every moment of her life. And with Armin's help, she didn't feel alone anymore. She could focus on her baby, her work, and her dreams without fear of being overwhelmed. Word spread among the staff about the CEO's support for Sana. Colleagues who had once ignored small struggles began to notice acts of dedication and care around them. Armin's kindness created a ripple effect, inspiring others to be more aware, more helpful, and more compassionate toward each other. Sana's confidence grew. She felt stronger, more capable, and more valued than ever before. Even the simple act of preparing a bottle or organizing her register brought a quiet joy, a feeling that her work and her love were seen and appreciated. One evening, as the store closed and Sana waved goodbye to the last customer, she looked at her baby sleeping peacefully in his stroller. She whispered softly, "We're going to be okay now, little one. We really are." Her voice was full of hope, gratitude, and love. Armin watched her from a distance, smiling quietly. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had witnessed the struggle, understood the sacrifice, and now saw the transformation. Through small acts of kindness and recognition, he had helped change a life. Not through power, authority, or money alone, but through empathy and understanding. And in that moment, both Sana and Armin realized something important: the world was a little brighter when people cared, when struggles were noticed, and when kindness reached those who needed it most. Sana left the store that night with a lightness in her step. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly supported. The long, exhausting days would still come, but now she knew she didn't have to face them alone. And that knowledge, more than anything, gave her strength, hope, and joy. Months passed, and Sana's life had begun to change in ways she had never imagined. The long, exhausting days were still there, but now she carried a quiet confidence that came from knowing she wasn't alone. With Armin's support, she had access to childcare, flexible hours, and encouragement to grow in her work. Her baby was healthy, happy, and thriving, and Sana felt a freedom she had never known before. One bright morning, Armin visited the store again. This time, he walked in with a calm smile, carrying a small package wrapped neatly in paper. Sana noticed him immediately, and her heart lifted at the sight of him. She no longer felt the confusion and fear she had felt months ago. Now there was trust, respect, and even friendship between them. "Good morning, Sana," Armin said warmly. "Good morning, sir," she replied, smiling back. She no longer called him CEO formally, it felt too distant now. "I brought something for your baby," Armin said, holding out the package. Sana took it carefully, unwrapping it to reveal a soft, colorful blanket and a small set of baby clothes. Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. Armin shook his head gently. "You don't need to thank me. It's just a small gesture, but I wanted you to know that we see all the little things you do every day." Sana hugged the package close, feeling a warmth in her chest. She realized that this was more than a gift, it was a symbol of recognition, care, and respect. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly valued, not just as a worker, but as a person, a mother, and someone worthy of attention and kindness. As the day went on, Armin observed quietly from a distance. He noticed how Sana interacted with her co-workers, how she guided the new employees with patience, and how she smiled at each customer with genuine warmth. It was clear that the support she had received had given her not just relief, but a renewed sense of purpose and confidence. During her lunch break, Sana sat quietly in the staff room, feeding her baby. She hummed softly, the familiar tune that had once been a quiet ritual in her life. But today, she felt different. She no longer felt the exhaustion pressing down like a heavy weight. Instead, she felt hope, strength, and a deep sense of gratitude. Armin quietly approached her. "Mind if I sit for a moment?" he asked. Sana shook her head. Of course not, she said, smiling. She no longer felt nervous around him, instead, she felt comforted. He watched her for a moment, then said softly, Sana, you've shown incredible courage and love. You've handled challenges that many people wouldn't even dare to face. I hope you realize how amazing you are. Sana looked up, blinking back tears. I've always tried to do my best. But sometimes it feels like it's not enough. It is enough, Armin said firmly. More than enough. And now, with the support around you, you can continue being strong without being alone. That's all anyone can ask for. Sana nodded, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. She realized that she no longer had to carry the world alone. She could focus on her baby, her work, and her own growth. And in doing so, she could finally breathe, hope, and dream again. Weeks turned into months, and Sana's life flourished. She became more confident in her work, managing her responsibilities with a balance she had never known before. Her co-workers noticed the change too. Her energy, her patience, and the genuine joy she exuded inspired everyone around her. The small store had become not just a workplace, but a place where kindness, care, and respect thrived. Armin continued to visit, sometimes quietly observing, sometimes offering words of encouragement. But he never interfered unnecessarily. He understood that the real transformation had come from recognizing her efforts and providing support, not control. One evening, as the store closed and Sana walked to her car with her baby, she felt a quiet sense of peace. For the first time in years, she felt that life wasn't just a series of struggles. There was hope, there was love, and there was a future she could embrace. Armin watched from a distance, smiling quietly. He had seen her journey from exhaustion and struggle to hope and strength. And he knew that the small acts of recognition, care, and support had made a difference far greater than he had imagined. Sana looked down at her baby, who smiled up at her with tiny, trusting eyes. She whispered softly, "We're going to be okay, little one. We really are." Her voice was full of love, hope, and gratitude. She knew that the hardest days were behind her, and that a new beginning had begun. And in that moment, both Sana and Armin understood something profound: the world could change, one life at a time, when someone noticed, cared, and acted with kindness. Sana had found strength in love, hope in support, and courage in recognition. Her life was no longer a struggle to survive. It had become a journey filled with possibility, happiness, and peace. And with that realization, she smiled, carrying her baby safely in her arms, ready to face the future with confidence and joy.